Hey there, and welcome to another Eurogamer Newscast. My name is Tom Phillips. I'm Eurogamer's Deputy Editor. And joining me today are Eurogamer News reporters Ed Nightingale.
Hello.
Say hello, Ed.
Hello.
Ishraq Subhan. And Victoria Kennedy.
Hello.
We've got two big topics to talk about this week in terms of news. It was the re-release of Cyberpunk 2077. It's back again 14 months later, finally, this time with patch 1.5 and natively now available on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S for the first time. We'll be talking a bit about the announcement, how that went down, what's new, what's next for the game. And we'll also be talking about the Wii U 3DS eShop, which is being switched off in terms of new purchases next year, March 2023. The video game industry takes and it gives away, or it gives and it takes. So yeah, lots to talk about. The week kicked off though with Cyberpunk, so let's start there. And we sort of knew this announcement was coming, right? Ed, you watched the stream. It was announced ahead of time. There were also a few leaks too, as there always are.
Yes, there were quite a few leaks leading up to it. And then, yeah, all done in a Twitch stream, which I don't know if that was necessarily the right way to make that announcement. It definitely feels like CD Projekt are trying to appear more human and approachable by saying, "Hey, we're people too. Let's banter on a Twitch stream." When from what they announced, that could have been a quick trailer. It took them quite a long time to get to the meat of the actual release date, which is what we all knew was coming and just wanted, and we all presumed it would be now, and it was. But yeah, we just had to watch an hour of Twitch stream before then of knife throwing and little customization things.
Neon bike things, wheels, so you can look like you're in Tron.
If that's what people want, then great.
Victoria, I know you were watching too. Was there
yeah.
anything in there that you were surprised about? Was it kind of what you expected? And
I like
how do you feel about the announcement in general?
I really like the detail. Like, I love the character customization. I think they've done a really good job with that, because that was definitely something that when it was first released all that time ago, everyone was really crying out for some good character creator. So I think that in itself has actually made me want to give the game a shot. So I will, at some point when I've got a free moment, actually be trying out that demo, because I think the character creator looked great. Personally, and I like that aspect of gaming. And then also the fact that they are giving a pretty chunky demo for those who want to give it a bash before committing. I also really liked. I agree with what Ed said. They did take quite a long route to finally get to telling us when it was actually going to be available, and it could have been done just as sort of bite-sized trailer, but that's what we got. And I think, I know there have been some issues, but I think it does look like the game we were all kind of hoping it was going to be when it was first announced. 10 years ago, whenever it was first announced, and when it came out, so
genuinely almost that long. Yeah, when it was first originally announced that they'd got the concept for it, and then it went into pre-production, and then it was delayed a lot of times. Ishraq, why do you think that they did it via a live stream now? Why not make a bigger deal out of it 14 months later? Why not shout about the fact that these PlayStation, Xbox versions are out there now?
It's a good question. I do think that, as well as just not having a live stream, if they just put it on like YouTube in like a 4K trailer, it would have saved us all a lot of time. To be honest, I think they're well aware that the release schedule this month and March is very packed, and if they make too much of a show and don't, I just don't feel like people are that interested. To be honest, even with the small announcement they did, it got a lot of traction. Like, if you go to social media, people are excited to go back to the game. I think people really just wanted a patched, fully complete game, and been waiting so long for it, and it's finally here. So I think, plus it's a free upgrade if you already own the game. So I just feel like, yeah, I think it's enough. Could they have reviewed it a different way? I guess, but I think they've achieved what they wanted, which is some engagement.
I think there's definitely a sense of goodwill there of wanting to go direct to the people who are, playing the game, and they can do that directly on a Twitch stream and get the chat involved and things like that. So I think there's a sense of it wanting to be inclusive as opposed to just, we're a corporate company, here's a trailer, and I get that, but I'm not sure if the updates that they offered were, warranted an hour of Twitch.
I think, I do think it was long. The stuff that they added, it's interesting to note the stuff that they have included in patch 1.5, because it is stuff that the community has really shouted for, like the ability to change your appearance in a game, about modding your appearance. More hairstyles, makeup colors, the ability to mod your apartment and buy more apartments. That's stuff that the hardcore have wanted, and yes, probably to some extent expected in the game on day one. It's good that it's finally in there now. But yeah, it was long, and we were waiting right up until the end for them to just say it's available now.
I like the fact that they were like, and the release date is, and then they play like another 3-minute trailer, and it's like, come on, we're still waiting.
Admittedly, had they done it at the start of the stream, everyone would have just said great and left. So
they
need to keep
gone download
there.
it.
I see that.
Yeah.
It was annoying because it did leak earlier that day that they were gonna basically shadow drop it, and it was still a little unsure exactly when that announcement was going to go live, when they were going to say it's available now. So they kept us all watching. They knew what they were doing. I'm keen to try it. I've been waiting to try it for the update. I don't know if you guys are going to go back to it now, soon in the future, or...
I've also been keen to try it and been waiting for this new version, however long it was going to take. And so I'm definitely going to give it a go now. And by give it a go, I mean spend 5 hours in the character creator and not actually play the game.
That's how you're going to use up your demo time.
Exactly. Just 5 hours of creating a character.
My V is going to be the best, because that'll be like, I won't be able to do anything with them, but they'll look great.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think for me the question still remains of, is now still the right time to play this game? It's taken them a year to sort of implement all these updates and changes and bug fixes, and having not played it yet, it seems like they've added in content that should have been there from the start. So it's kind of like, okay, well, if this is the fresh start, but there's still a long way to go potentially, it still, from what I've seen, looks like quite a sort of cold, clinical kind of world. And looking back to the first launch, and people criticizing the content, there was a lot of controversy around stereotyping and representation, and like the trans billboards and all those sorts of things, which some people were okay with, some people weren't. It seems like they're not addressing any of those sorts of things. This is very much just a sort of gameplay fixes and bug fixes thing, and there's still a long way to go in terms of content. And if there is more DLC to come that is story-based content, that could still be another year off maybe. And is that the point where you're like, okay, now there's content worth playing, or is it even still worth playing at this point? I don't know yet.
It was interesting, wasn't it, that they didn't talk about any additional story expansions. And I understand that they just want to say, look, the game that we actually released 14 months ago is now here for you to play and in a much better state. And then that stuff will probably be announced down the line. Well, it will be. I think they'll treat this like a live service game for the foreseeable. There's some kind of multiplayer plan for it, but they've not said anything about that in a while either. It'll be interesting to see what else is coming.
What do you guys all feel about the photo mode aspects? Obviously, they've got some new poses and things for Johnny, and is that something that you would do in your gameplay? I'm not a big photo mode user personally, but
I like photo modes as a chronicle of my playtime, and I will capture screenshots in Assassin's Creed, for example, as sort of a or Zelda as sort of I remember that moment where I did that, or that pretty sunset came up. But I don't post them to Twitter and Instagram, that kind of thing.
For me, it depends on how pretty the game is. I played Uncharted Lost Legacy recently, and that took me about twice the time it should have done because I was faffing around in photo mode trying to make nice pictures in the middle of the action. And that's a really pretty game and warrants it. I don't know if Cyberpunk warrants that. I'll let you know if and when I play it.
I have a question on character creators. You guys, when you're playing a game with a character creator, do you do you just use the default? Because there's always a default Shepherd or V or whatever. Do you spend ages making it look like something or someone that you like want to spend ages dreaming up, or are you the narcissistic person that makes it look like yourself?
I've done that in The Sims. I've made a Sims me, but that was maybe more when I was a teenager, and I don't know, I was living vicariously through my sim. Now I just like to get as creative as I can. So
I won't ask what your sim did or what you made your sim do.
there's lots of swimming. What are you thinking?
Maybe you shut them in the house and set fire to it. I don't know.
No, those were the ones that crossed me. They got the pool ladder removed.
Toaster in the pool. Yeah. Ed, how about you?
I mean, you mentioned Shepherd there. I think Shepherd, when I played it for the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect, I think I did go default just because the character creator was so bad in that game that everybody ends up looking ugly. And my main thing
that was the charm of the
main
game.
thing with a character creator is like whether however they look, I just want them to look hot. If it's someone I'm going to be playing as for however long, I want them to look hot. So if they look weird and ugly, then from just a bad character creator, then I'll go with default. But otherwise, just make them look hot.
I feel a bit disappointed when you get character creators and things like, I think they did change it in the PS5 Demon Souls, but you spend ages on a character creator and then they get like a whopping great big helmet and you're like, well, can't see what my hard work.
But that's the other thing with Cyberpunk, is that it's a first-person game.
Yeah.
So again, having not played it, are there any moments where actually your character, I'm presuming in cutscenes and things, maybe,
on the bike,
you do actually see the character? Because otherwise, why spend so long doing it?
I think it does
in
not go
cutscenes, yeah.
third person if you're on your motorbike as well. So just spend your entire time just riding around Night City and you'll be fine.
Great, 60 hours well spent.
I kind of get I think this just says something about me, but I get kind of annoyed when I see. I think there are story-based games where when a character is a character, I prefer it to be the default. So in Mass Effect, for example, I always play FemShep and I will always play as the default. And it kind of annoys me when I see people who've just made like a version of themselves. And I'm like, you aren't Shepard. What are you doing in this scene? You aren't friends with Garrus. Get out of here.
So judged. I suppose it also depends for me, which maybe sounds a bit weird, but it depends if there'll be like romance options, because I don't want to see myself making out with an alien.
Why? That's half the fun.
Okay, space racist. Ashley Williams.
Ooh.
I mean, you guys do you. That's fine, but I'm happily married, and that's all. That's enough for me.
So am I. To Miranda.
It's just a fantasy.
I mean, to answer your original question, Tom.
Yes, there was an original question.
Yeah, there was. I'm sort of in the middle where I don't like having a default character, but I'm too lazy to faff around with all the different customizations. So I press I'm the person that presses the random button. I'm like, okay, this person looks hideous, that would do. And just play the rest of the game like that.
Ishrak chose chaos.
Well, not to bring this screeching back to Cyberpunk, but there's plenty of time to play in the future. There's still squashing bugs. Today we reported on how there was a bug where the PS4 doesn't register the disc anymore once you've updated, so that's good. There's also something to do with PC crashes, and they're looking into transferring over PlayStation 4 trophies to PlayStation 5 and upping the Series S frame rate. So there's clearly lots of work to do, and this is not the end of the road for Cyberpunk, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it for weeks, months, probably years to come. So
they've also dropped the price of it now. It's like 20 quid. So even if you're like, I want to give the demo a go, and that's 5 hours after that, even if you like it, it's literally half price at the moment. So there's no harm in
I
giving
mean,
it a go.
I don't think they could get away with selling it for full price now, 2 years on.
No,
Just
even if it
far too
was
late.
a great game that launched spectacularly at its arrival back in
Yeah, it's far too late.
December
20.
2020. What is time anymore?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it should be reduced by now. Look at Battlefield 2042, already 20 quid. Anyway, so that's going to be available for ages. Speaking of something that's not going to be available for ages, though, the Wii U and 3DS eShop is changing next year, and you're no longer going to be able to purchase things from it. It's still there to re-download past content and get game updates, and they're not shutting down the Wii U and 3DS online servers yet. Presumably that will happen at some point, but they are sort of, like drawing the curtains and saying night night Wii U. It's been a lovely, not very many years, but no one plays you anymore. I'm not so surprised about that. I was surprised about 3DS because that is, it's one of the best selling handheld consoles of all time, and it's old, but yeah. How does everyone feel about this? Because there's certainly some opinions on the internet. Let's start with you, Ishrak, on this.
So I think this is purely a business move. It's so they can resell you all those games remastered on Switch. That's what every company does. I could see the cost benefit, like cost revenue, like sort of analysis where they're like, well, nobody really buys things anymore. It's really expensive to run these servers, so we're just going to shut it down. But like we all know what Nintendo does. Like they do this every time, where eventually they just sunset the store and then you have to repurchase the game. They did that with Wii, and they do it again. Then the other thing is, yeah, just the game preservation argument. I'm not one for game preservation, but I do get that people see games as a real cultural product that's worth preserving, and the fact that there are a lot of digital games that you just can't buy physically, it is a problem because right now you can download the games if you already own them, but eventually we all know the servers will shut down, and then there's no legal option to get those games afterwards.
We obviously we don't know if 3DS and Wii U games are going to be available on Switch in the future, but it was interesting when this announcement was first made that they had a line in their FAQ which stated that game preservation is really important, but sorry, basically, and we don't have any other plans to release these games currently in the future. So, which was very surprising. Victoria, what do you think happened there with that line going out there and then quietly being removed from the internet?
I'm sure Nintendo, when they did that, hoped that no one would notice. I think they probably made more of a thing of it by removing it. Because obviously then it immediately drew everyone's attention and everyone was like, whoa, hang on, why is this gone? What's it mean, etc. So I'm not sure that was the best play they could have done. But I don't know, I'm slightly grumpy old man about this, and I think it makes good business sense and I can understand why Nintendo are doing it. Then again, I don't have a Wii U or a 3DS, so it doesn't actually affect me. I appreciate there are others out there who might have a more sentimental attachment to this recent move by Nintendo, but at the same time, the Switch is the hardware of the moment. There are games coming to the Switch through, Switch Online. I think it makes sense. I can understand doing it, and who actually plays their Wii U anymore? I can't think of one of my friends that still has a Wii U that is like in active use.
I think that, the number of people still playing their Wii U is very, very small. But people feel like I've paid for this thing, I've bought this thing, I expect it to continue to be serviced and run, as it has been for ages.
Yeah, but you're not
for the
still expecting
foreseeable
like your
future.
Nintendo 64 to be serviced. Like, tech dates, and we have to kind of move forward with the tech.
How do you feel, Ed? Is there a game preservation angle here? Do you understand why a lot of the internet is upset this week?
Yes and no. No, in that I, again, don't own a Wii U or 3DS, so like Victoria, this has literally zero impact on me. So there's part of me that's like, I really don't care. But yeah, I think there is definitely is an argument about game preservation. I think people, when it comes to the sort of the classic games, I think there's a sense of it doesn't matter too much because hopefully Nintendo will continue to improve Switch Online if those games aren't already available as part of the subscription, which is probably much better value for money anyway than buying them all individually on a Wii U or a 3DS. So hopefully, as much as they said there aren't intentions of changing things, hopefully some of those games will, if they're not already, come to the Switch. I think the issue really is around the original games that were released there that haven't been released anywhere else and will be lost to time with the stores going down. And there was the whole thing with the Vita, which Sony U turned on, with a similar thing of all these original games, that were going to be lost, and that in itself is sad. Nintendo can do whatever they like with their own games, but when it's involving other developers, that somewhat complicates their business decision. And I'm interested in what that business decision really is. I mean, is it that expensive to host these stores? Is this really a money-saving thing, or is it more just we want to focus on Switch now, just to change generations? I'm not entirely sure what their decision is there. And also, there's the argument that they've said, well, we've given a year, so that there's a whole year for people to actually download what they need to or whatever else. Although I did notice, Tom, on your story, you wrote that from the 23rd of May, you won't be able to add credit or add funds with a credit card. And from the 29th of August, you won't be able to do it with an eShop card. So after May, I don't know how you're meant to buy them, even if they're available, because if you can't add a credit card.
Yeah, I think that relates to funds that you could turn into like your shop wallet that sits on the store, that is like your pool of money that you've paid into Nintendo that you can then just, like if someone wanted to put £20 on a account and say, oh, go buy whatever game you want whenever it comes out, here's £20. But it is, they are sunsetting these features over time, and the question then is what is next, and is more coming? And I think that a lot of the frustration this week has been that Nintendo, they did pull that line from their FAQ. They haven't really said what's next. There's no suggestion that some really good digital-only games from the 3DS and Wii U era will be preserved another way. And I think that's what people want. And I think there is an expectation, as you guys, Ishrak and Victoria said, that technology ages, and you have to be realistic about not only the expenses of keeping old servers and things up and running, but also the number of people who are actively still using them. Balance that with the fact that, what people want is not a bad thing. They want game preservation. They want to be able to play these games down the line. And Nintendo and other companies do need to come up with a way that is possible if they are taking access to these games away, I believe. And I don't think that the 3DS or Wii U eShops were ever created with sort of a digital future in mind. I think that they were very standalone things made over a decade ago, and in some cases, and that is just unfortunately the end of their product life cycle next year. But my hope is that Switch Online is a blueprint for the future, and this is maybe the last time that we see eShops going dark, and whatever comes next with Switch 2, if it's backwards compatible, hopefully, that there isn't another eShop that gets shut, that it can just live on. And like the Xbox store, Microsoft sort of has this figured out, right? The Xbox 360 store didn't get shut off. It's just part of the Xbox store. There isn't a specific Xbox One store. It's just part of the Xbox store.
Exactly. So, just have a Nintendo store, and then you can access that from whatever console. Sorted.
Yeah.
I do think, though, Nintendo has given people a lot of notice. Like, you can still download the games up until, March next year. So that's over 12 months.
Yeah, I think for people who are, some of the headlines were a little panicky. The store is being shut. Makes it sound initially like, if you don't...
I'd be more up in arms if they were like, we've shut the store and it happens at noon today. Go. Like, that would really, that would have been a really bad move. But they have given a lot of notice. So if people are feeling really passionate that there's a game that they want to preserve, they can go and get it and download it and have it.
Well, I think the main problem is even if you do that, it's stuck on that console. It's stuck on that Wii U. There's no permanent medium to store it like you would a physical games media. And there's no way you can resell it or pass it on to someone else, really. And that's the wider problem with digital games. Like, even with moving music, at least there's different distribution platforms. So if one service shuts down, you can go somewhere else. Whereas Nintendo, Sony, and PlayStation hold a monopoly on their stores. If they shut down, that's it. There's nothing else you can really do. And just to pick up on Tom's point about like Microsoft changing their model and how the Xbox Store does have Xbox One games, you're right, but also Microsoft's changed into a service-based business model, whereas I think Nintendo is still very much the traditional model of selling consoles every few years and selling games with it. So I just don't think they had the incentive to really keep the Switch eShop or Switch Online running after they sunset the Switch.
Maybe they wrap it into a subscription service then, because I do like what they're doing with Switch Online. I think that is the best way now to access, well, it's the only really viable way to access the old NES and SNES games. But I think after those games have been monetized on there was like a virtual console on Wii U, on 3DS, they sold them as, actual physical micro consoles at Christmas that you could plug into your telly via USB. And those were not cheap. None of those ways were cheap. The Switch Online, if they can expand that to more platforms, which I believe that they will, I think that maybe that is the future then.
What also amused me was that they also wrapped this up with the whole memories thing of, but isn't it fun to look back at what you've all played? And 90% of the sales that I saw had Netflix as the top software. And I'm like, well, are you even using this for games in the
that was
first
very
place?
funny.
Like, is this
That
just a
was very
Netflix
funny.
machine, in which case you don't need this anymore?
You know what's so damning about that? Wii U 3DS had Netflix. Switch still does not.
Yep.
Switch doesn't. Yeah, I know.
Unbelievable.
I actually want to know what's going on behind the scenes with Nintendo and Netflix. They're like, no, you're not paying us enough, Netflix.
I don't understand. It has Hulu, and I think it's got some. It's got like Nico in Japan. It does have apps. It has the capability to have apps. It has YouTube, I believe, now. But
yeah, it has no YouTube. Yeah,
it's weird. I hadn't seen those. That's.
Did anyone do those memory things?
I didn't own the consoles.
I don't have the consoles. Yeah.
I did, and it reminded me that my 3DS got stolen sort of towards the end of its lifespan. And here's another thing about Nintendo: if you lose your console, then it's a real pain to get your digital license back. And of course, there was no cloud saving on the 3DS, so I had about 300 hours of Animal Crossing. New Leaf was the 3DS one.
Yeah.
Gone. Had to start over from scratch.
Did you get to see what was played by whoever stole it?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Judge their taste.
I didn't, and I don't really know what they did, but I'd said, look, this is my account on this piece of hardware. That piece of hardware is now gone, and I've now got this piece of hardware. So can you give me my back catalogue of digital games back? And of course, you have to ring up support, and then they ring up, Miyamoto and ask for his permission. And
Tom Phillips. Okay.
Well, I was actually interested to see how it would be like, and I certainly didn't say, "Oh, by the way, I'm a journalist." I was like, no, like this is all how it is, and they got there in the end, but no, there's no cloud saving or anything like that. And the person who then, I guess, had my old 3DS just switched it on one day, and the account that was on there was empty. I suppose, whoever they are, screw you.
If you're watching, you know what you did.
Yeah. Well, so that is going to happen next year, and it will be interesting to see what they say in the meantime about other bits and pieces, and if they're going to expand Switch Online plus expansion pack.
Great name.
Is Majora's Mask on there yet?
Anytime now. It's this month, so anytime now.
That'd be good.
Are you going to stream it, Ed?
Maybe. I might be a bit Zelda'd out, but we'll see.
Do it.
Okay. Well, that's something to look forward to. Right. I think we've basically covered our bases. It's been another interesting week in the games industry, and thank you all for joining me, and thank you all for watching. I've been Tom Phillips. My Twitter handle is at TomPhillipsEG. Ishraq, do you want to share your Twitter handle?
Yeah, it's ISHRXQ_.
Cool, memorable. Victoria
Bye. I am a little chop shop gal.
and Ed.
You can find me at ed_knights with an N.
Thanks again for watching, guys. See you next time.